Hello there. Today I am going to be reviewing the third studio album by English Sri Lankan artist M.I.A. This album is titled M.I.A. It has an interesting typeface that is used. You use forward and backslashes to form the M's and the A's. The Y, of course, you can't do that with, so you use that. But it's made to be that way so that it cannot be detected by certain Google search engine and algorithms. And it's just an interesting, fun thing M.I.A. decided to do to stylize this title. The album was released on July 7th, 2010, and it's the first M.I.A. album that came out when I was actually somewhat aware of it coming out. This was around the time when I actually kind of got into more of her music and kind of then went back into her back catalog from. This is a very different album from her first two. Her first two were distinctly more world music based, and this album, although there's the undertones of world music, especially types of Bollywood and Tamil music that she does always reference in all of her albums, this album is a lot more electroclash, it's a lot more industrial, it's also a lot more synth pop. There's also some industrial rock thrown in there, and there's actually more singing done by M.I.A. on this record than she has done in previous. But of course, still lots of rapping. This was the first album she made just after the birth of her son, Xxxo, in 2009. She recorded this album pretty much entirely in Los Angeles. This is the first album where she's not recording all over the world. Although it does say that she did at one point go into Mexico and go on these Mayan pyramids and recorded in Mexico a little bit, but all of the mixing, the producing, she worked with Black Star as well as Rusko, who was relatively unknown at the time, and Diplo, who she previously collaborated with, only worked on one track. She talks about the digital ruckus. This album comes about right after an interesting shift that she describes, and I've also noticed her talked about, in the sort of co-opting of the technological free internet. The theme of this album is a lot about how search engines like Google were once these more free-form, anarchist sort of objective ways of retrieving information, but the government took over the internet at a certain point. And that probably would be described as, the time when Vivo started appearing instead of people being able to put YouTube videos just on their own independent little channels. We started to see a, more corporate angle to how the internet is used. Google, then acquiring YouTube and, AOL being co-opted by Time Warner. All of these things are signaling, the fact that it's becoming increasingly difficult to find information that the government does not want you to see. And the opening song, which features, the Connected to the Arm Bone, Head Bone song, which we all know, speaks about how, if you're on your iPhone or the keyboard and you're typing in something, you're not that far removed from possibly the government. There's some conspiracy, NSA undertones to it, but I do believe that, unfortunately, and Edward Snowden is a proponent of this, that, surveillance by the government on phones and all of these things, communication, and also Google search histories and browser and IP addresses, these are things that the government can keep track of. And for better or for worse, we also have the, fight against terrorism. We have all these reasons to possibly want to do this, but it also kind of does become like that big brother, shadow government ideology of them being watching over us and controlling us. And so M.I.A. is always going to push the envelope, and she's always going to want to create a record that is ahead of its time and also, talking about something that no one else is going to be talking about. And so she really finds her niche on this record and definitely fits the type. This album is all electronic sounds. It's very industrial. She records, chainsaws and drills for one song, which was very unique for her. So it's very punk at the same time, and it's very heavy. And you'd think that maybe that would turn me off, but I actually found myself really drawn to this. The song Steppin Up, which is the first real song on this album, it didn't receive the huge critical acclaim like some of the other songs did, and it was never a filmed music video, even though it was a single, has something quite infectious and energizing about it. It's a song that is almost trying to be a hip-hop club banger type song, but of course that use of the drills and the chainsaws to accent and carry the rhythm is very unusual and very jarring. And so it keeps you in this sort of confused and sort of flustered headspace about it. The song, though, has that sing-song kind of catchiness to it that I find very alluring, and it breaks down at the end into, more vocal synthesized work, and I find it to be very almost esoteric in that because it just feels like it's rising above the simple, simplistic structure. I mean, she managed to make a song that is so interesting, in my opinion, from something that would be so banal and so bare-boned with all these raw industrial tools and instruments. Make no mistake, it's a divisive song. It's like a divisive record. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. To many people, this will just sound like noise, and it will, noise with a Z, and it will turn a lot of people off. The lyrics are also a little bit on the playful side, which I don't mind because I still think they're witty. I've stepping up in this club, rub-a-dub-dub, rub-a-dub-a-dub. I find it so fun. And I mean, it's silly, but it's sort of an emblematic of where M.I.A. is trying to distract your attention. And then, of course, she says her moniker and says, "You know who I am." And this is something that, she's been doing with some songs, the M.I.A. loudspeaker, kind of broadcast feel. The song does feel like it's being broadcast through these sort of massive audiovisual channels. And so if I had imagined a music video for this song, I always imagined it being sort of portrayed as like an attack or an army of technology and internet. And so all of these tools like YouTube and text messaging and FaceTime and Skype, all of these things would be utilized to show kind of this sort of information orgy, is how I would describe it. So we have Xxxo, probably the most pop song on this record, and it's definitely a song that I think definitely deserved to be a single. It speaks a lot about the creation of the sex symbol in the internet age. So it's taking also in some hints at online dating and also dating profiles, as well as online porn. The music video is quite interesting. She uses her sort of strange, sort of garish graphic design chops to sort of juxtapose herself into these, YouTube videos and old MySpace layouts, which of course, even at this time, MySpace is very passé. And she uses a lot of imagery to symbolize things like the leopard skins. She has things written in Arabic, and it sort of is poking fun at the sort of now online dating culture. But also there's this feeling, because she's singing about, you try and make me something that I'm really not. The music video has, these classic greeting card hallmark imagery. What do we really portray when we're putting ourselves out onto the internet? There's this level of insincerity, and it becomes very disingenuous to who we really are as a person. And the song was produced by Black Star and Rusko, and it includes tribal and also techno influences. She does have sort of that tribal Tamil choral backing. And of course, she's speaking about tech speak. It feels like a little cheesy for her to talk about iPhones and Twitter, but at the time, this was newer stuff. This was newer territory. And so she's trying to craft a pop song out of the fabric of what creates pop culture. And so it's redirecting it back at itself. So, I mean, for me, it's a highlight song. It really carries through. The girly delivery that she has is unique and interesting, and it makes the singing a little bit more tolerable, because let's be real, Maya's voice is not necessarily something you would want to hear being sung. She's so much better as that sort of Cockney accented rapper. And so the fact that she, puts herself, when she does reach those high notes in that sort of Tamil influenced sing style, also very heavily synthesized, it works pretty well. And the song is very memorable for that. I mean, the production is really good on this song. And it's pop enough that it could really be on mainstream radio. It's the only song on this record that could. Because then we have Tequila. It's not tequila, but Tequila. Tequila. Clever wordplay there. She always does on some of her song titles. This song more is about her relationship with her partner at the time, Benjamin Bronfman. You can tell that a lot of domestic sounds of a drain, which she literally sings down the drain, and then she has the recording sound of a drain drawing up, and also the clink of bottles. The song references a ton of different alcohol brands. The song, however, does not really have a structure. It exists as sort of this cacophonous, sort of bubbling over, almost nonsensical bombshell. And it is interesting, although a bit stretched too long. I do think this song is a bit too long and overstays its welcome because it is a little bit of an assault on the senses. You have a lot of different insular sounds that are very loud. There's those really, really loud electronic, I don't know how else to describe them, but like, warbles. And they can be really grating on the ears when everything else is dimmed down. Because there are a few instances where the more interesting backbone of the song is subdued very low decibel wise, and the rest of it is electronic stuff that's just it sort of like sounds like soundtrack effects, or like a tech like it think Star Wars, something like that. Jim Beam and Jameson, they just gave me joke. When I see Pernod, I say, oh hell no. Kalula, a turnoff, I tell him to Smirnoff. Captain Morgan, a shake with sparks. When we hang out, he shoots arrows through my heart. Blue tattoo, chillin' up in Malibu. He got 99 bananas, but he's not my boo. The lyrics are on completely M.I.A. They're just crazy. They're all over the place. She's honestly just making rhymes for the sake of making rhymes, and of course also to name drop all of these alcohol brands. Of course, this reference of like, I'm drinking my feelings away. I'm so frustrated with my partner that I'm just resorting to alcohol. And then that I got sticky, sticky, icky, icky weed. I got a shot of tequila in me. It guys get grating after a while when she does the sticky, icky, icky part, because she's mimicking those exaggerated electronic riffs and trying to echo them. It is not my favorite song on this record by any means, but I also don't necessarily skip it when I listen to the album. Though I will say this, I don't listen to this album too much. You have to be in the right kind of space. It's quite a multi-sensory experience and very stimulating, but at the same time, it's not something you necessarily are going to listen to when you're like quietly working on a painting or, trying to concentrate on something. Because this album demands your attention like nothing else I've ever listened to before. Lovalot is actually a really underrated sleeper kind of song. It's almost set like an interlude or filler, but it's really nice to have something that is low-key, it is still energetic, but it's just taken down several decibels, which we definitely need after coming off of Tequila. This song resembles, I think, more of the structure of world music that she did on her Kala record and also on Arular, because it definitely has a more Middle Eastern Indian feel and rhythm. She has that glottal stop, which is something in an English accent where you say Lovalot, and she would say Lovalot, but you don't pronounce the T, so it sounds like she's saying I love Allah, as in I love Allah, which is very clever. Too much flack for that, because that could be just her accent, but she's also using her accent to be clever, and I think that's one of the brilliant things about this song. They told me this is a free country, but now it feels like a chicken factory. Like a Taliban trucker eating boiled up yucca, I keep my eyes down like I'm in a black burqa. I fight the ones that fight me, she repeats over and over again. I don't take this all lying down. Who's in town? Them don't like me don't like them. And then she says, like, Hu Jin Tao, and she sings it in such a stereotypical Chinese accent. And it does feel a little insincere, like she could be poking fun at these different cultures, but it's at the same time, I do find clever and well constructed. It's a lot about rhythm and rhyme, and her voice just has this knack for finding the right rhythm and way of speaking. That's why her rap is so interesting to me. It's also unpredictable, so it keeps things interesting. You never know where her voice is going to go, mixed with, of course, the really groovy rhythm. And this song does have such like a recorded outdoor feel. It feels like one reviewer said, like you're in a dark alley and you literally feel the heat of the street coming off of this song. It feels urgent, and it feels like a little bit nefarious. And also she sings, shit's meant to be free, where's Bob Marley? Because I won't turn my cheek like I'm Gandhi. So there's this Russian teenager named Zenet Abdurakhovanova. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And she was this Russision suicide bomber. So M.I.A. is sort of putting herself into that sort of mindset, or that sort of do it for the country kind of soldier or militaristic sort of figure. But at the same time, she's addressing all the haters who don't like that she talks about politics. They don't like what she says. Well, she's just going to say more of it. And she's going to, again, merge East and West together in a very sort of clever, almost like Mad Lib type strong structure, but it works. These words that she throws in there, they don't feel random or out of place, even if they may seem so at first on paper. something about the feel and the energy of the song makes it work for me. Story to Be Told has this sound of a helicopter taking off, and it sort of intros and outros the song very effectively. It really sets a place and setting as this song is. It's a story to be told. It's a much more mournful and reflective song, and I appreciate it for that because it switches gears a little. I licked envelopes, wrote a letter to the Pope. He never gave me rope in the times I couldn't cope. They cleaned up the dope and censored my scope. The writing that's on the walls been beaten to a pulp. All I ever wanted was my story to be told. They don't listen to us. And yeah, this is a common, third world. This is M.I.A. in her sort of more common territory of character, sort of anthropological exploration. She's placing herself in someone else's character. She's singing, but also, I mean, from her own character point of view, she has a story to tell about as being a refugee, and she wants to make sure her story is told. So this is a classic, listen to the voice of the underprivileged, and we need to understand that there is possibly some sort of entity out there, be it corporate or otherwise, that possibly does not want us to speak up, doesn't want us to speak up against the Pope, though I love Pope Francis. Um, but, these sort of powers that be kind of have been used as weapons to silence people in broader scopes. And she's not one to shy away from that territory. I mean, she's all about controversy. So It Takes a Muscle is such a cute song that almost really doesn't fit on the album. I learned that it was actually a cover. I was like, there's no way M.I.A. composed this melody herself. It's way too sing-song. So a Dutch group named Spectral Display created this song back in the 80s. So she's just covering it, and it's made very reggae. And I think it's, she always flirts with tropical style songs in the past. So I like seeing her attribute that, and it's so innocent. And for M.I.A. to be portraying, I mean, she is talking about how love is something you have to work for, obviously. Love isn't just this flowery thing that just naturally happens. But her singing a song that is so positive, with its outlook, that isn't clouded in all these metaphors and confusing lyricism, is quite different and unique for her. But it shows that there's a bit of an inner hippie in her that is all about, love and rainbows. And she's not afraid to. And I think it's also influenced by the fact that she was a mother at this point. She was, inspired by her son in making this album. And, she wanted to create, there's one other song that does this. She wanted to create some sort of unification on this record, not just be purely divisive and backstabbing, because some of these songs do come across that way. And she wants there to be some unifying factors to sort of create a better feeling of goodwill, because, just angering everyone isn't necessarily going to get the job done, right? But you do need to let people know what's going on, and the truth is not always pretty, so she knows that. It is what it is. This song for me is a bit filler. Her vocals are very muffled over and lackluster, in my opinion. And again, I feel like it's a song that is about like the street hustler or someone who's on the street and is just trying to make money and, can't break the cycle of what their economic situation is. And then, of course, it's very general because it could also be speaking about just all sorts of unfortunate circumstances that someone could be stuck in. It is what it is. But I appreciate the sentiment, but the song feels too low energy for the rest of the album. And it's a little bit simplistic for what we've been hearing. It is a Black Star song, but Black Star can be a little bit low-key and subdued. So I appreciate it fitting in the album. Again, it's a song that you have to hear when listening to the whole album. It provides some levity, even though it's a little bit melancholic. But it's not something I would single out and listen to on my own very much. We have Born Free. Oh my goodness. Now, the music video that was released, this was the lead single for the album, is extremely controversial. It features basically these redheaded men being like, and it features a lot of drug use, but it features them being lined up and executed in very brutal, graphic manners. It's influenced by the Sri Lankan government. They filmed videos on phones of Tamils being executed during the sort of latter years of the Sri Lankan Civil War, and so M.I.A. is commenting on that. She's using a approach that is to upset and to use that as a way to question. To upset is to question, to disturb is to awaken. and make more aware of what's going on. The video was restricted on YouTube. You know, it's actually, I only saw it once when it came out, and I can never see it again because I'm very squeamish and I don't like seeing a lot of blood and things like that. The song is the most industrial on this record, along with one other. It's a Switch song, so she did work with Switch on this record, and it is unrelenting. Man-made power stood like a tower, higher, higher, hello. And the higher you go, you feel lower. Very interesting, clever there. I don't want to live for tomorrow. I want to push my luck today. I'll throw this in your face when I see you. I got something to say. There's one lyric in here that is so clever that I didn't realize until I researched this song. So she says, so I check shit because I'm lippier. Oh, split the check, like Slovakia. And at first I was like, why is that? What doesn't make any sense? But she writes Czech, and the split between Czech Republic and Slovakia, what was once Czechoslovakia. When I finally understood that, I was like, that is so clever. And again, she speaks so fast that you can't really understand many but the last syllable of a lot of these words and phrases that she sings. So like in a lot of some of these lines and stanzas, you only hear the last few syllables because that's where there's the emphasis. And so the rest of it just kind of gets jarbled. But I thought that was a really clever anecdote in there. And it's a self-proclaimed manifesto. I've got something to say. I'm born free. I can say what I want, and I am going to take down the tower. The tower being, you know, the money elite, corporations, and also, you know, the naysayers and the the music industry. You know, a lot of these things are built on, you know, money and greed and the silencing of non-white people and also of women. So she's self-proclaiming her angst, and that angst definitely comes across. Meds and Feds feels like a 80s industrial rocker song. This song is a guitar riff that beats you over the head, and it leaves you breathless. This is the song where she actually mentions the digital ruckus, and she sings, I just give a damn over and over and over again until she's just saying, I just. I love how she, you know, she uses the spoken language in such interesting ways. To repeat that over and over again, it's actually kind of fun, and it's not something that's hard to say, and it sounds interesting. And I mean, she just, you know, who says all the rules are made with rulers? We break them and are breaking them, computer. Hocus pocus, but you can't take away our focus. We're growing up in the middle of digital ruckus. Again, unapologetic, a little bit more campy, but like fun. She's just like sort of letting go with that sort of nonsense lyrical rap style that she is so accustomed to. Again, I feel like this album, it really shows her exploring what rap music can be and the ways that you can blend that. She does it best with blending with electronic. Turning your voice into an electronic instrument is basically what she's employing here, and also a guitar, and mimicking that and that high up-tempo energy. So Tell Me Why is a sort of bringing everything together and more sort of altruistically focused closing song on this record, which is the only song that Diplo actually really helped her and worked on. It samples a song from the Alabama Sacred Harp Singers, like a choral aspect of it. It's very slickly produced, and she does reference Wonderwall as well from Oasis, but in the lyrics, throw your hands up like you're mad at the ceiling. Tell me why things change, but it feels the same. If life is such a game, how come people all act the same? And so this is her real kind of more broad-reaching appeal anthemic song. Again, she's really singing quite more than rapping, and a little bit like kind of summarizing and restating a lot of what she's been saying about how we're, you know, in this time of change, and we are in a period of time when things could become more transparent. You know, the media, we're seeing this now, especially this album was released 7 years ago. We're seeing how the code is being rewritten by, you know, predominantly women and people of color to, you know, upset the powers that be. Because things are changing, but it sometimes will on the surface feel like nothing actually is. And you have to understand the grassroots movement that is beneath all of this. I could see this being, you know, just, yeah, an anthem for everyone who feels as though the time is not yet there for them to finally get their dues and to be represented in society and to change the, upthrow the patriarchy and the white supremacy. But it's speaking in that direction. But of course, it doesn't point fingers. It doesn't get too specific in what it's trying to overcome. It just says the ceiling. Well, we all know what that glass ceiling is, don't we? But it's a questioning people's and human behavior as well, which is, something that MIA always does like to remove herself a little bit, as if she's an observer of the human psyche and condition, and is sort of referencing that to be like, what really is going on here. This song is very broad in that scope. We closed the album out with a song called Space. This was featured in an episode of Entourage. It's a very trippy, psychedelic inspired song. She sings about, floating in space in their space odyssey. My lines are down, you can't call me. It's very chill. And again, it features some breakdown where she does again artfully master blending her voice with electronic production. To sort of dizzy you and confuse you a little bit at one point, but then it all kind of just smooths out again towards the end. The song isn't something that I'm necessarily crazy about. It's just there for me. It's a nice tie to the end of the album, to just sort of leave you feeling in sort of a bit of an elevated sort of mind space. She could have easily ended the album with Tell Me Why and just left it with that powerful sort of period, but instead she kind of opens things up to sort of more kind of esoteric and sort of, just chilled out vibe. Gravity is my enemy. It grabs at me like I'm money. Gravity, yeah, it could be our enemy. We're not held down by anything anymore. This is the next level. I will just say there are some bonus songs that were released. Most of them I'm not that crazy about. They're okay. We have Caps Lock and Illy Girl. There is one song, Internet Connection, that I will just briefly discuss because I do find that song to be quite interesting, and I always kind of include it as like a part of this album. She's sampling these Filipino Verizon workers, talking about, the complications and making fun of like how difficult it is to, switch your internet provider or your. It's so funny. You just have to listen if you haven't heard it. It's meant to be funny, and it's a poke fun at the absurdity of how crazy we've made technology and phone service and the internet and cable. But at the same time, she also makes fun of herself. She's like, I'm going to do something. I'm going to get off the computer. I spend way too much, my internet connection is down. It's that like anxiety of like, I was cruising out of my mind. I was surfing out of my mind and the internet crashed again last night. And now I don't know what to do. I don't have my internet. It's that like sort of withdrawal and anxiety that we now have created for ourselves because of the fact that internet is so much like our bread and butter, or it's like our water. We can't live without it. We can't live without our phones, without internet connection. And these things, can break and fail us, and we have to learn to see through like how to deal with that. So it's a really fun experimental techno song that I just thought was really brilliant and clever and wanted to highlight. All in all, again, like I said, I highly recommend any M.I.A. fans. This will be the one album that a lot of people will have a lot to say about. It's not considered her big, great album like CalR or RR. This album is very different from those two. This sort of stands alone as being a more, frenzied and confused. She says this album was also partly inspired by cabin fever. She was taking care of her kid and stuck for 18 months in Los Angeles in this house, and she, was going a little crazy. And there was also this sort of loneliness that sort of creeped in because of it. But yeah, the ultimate, the battle for information is a battle that is a very 21st century battle, and it's a new thing, and she's always going to want to be at the forefront of whatever is to come. And I do think that this album actually is a little bit ahead of its time. At the same time, maybe not, but she, is everything she sings about with this. The NSA stuff hadn't come out at this time. She was a little bit aware of things that I think if people listened a little bit closer would have realized, she's not just pulling stuff out of thin air. She's really alerting us to the internet is a beautiful thing, but it is also, not so great in other ways. The way we're all connected is awesome, but it has repercussions. But there are ways to and make it work for everyone. But it's tricky and it's complicated. So ultimately, I feel like this album had to be made, and it was a very interesting stepping stone in her career. And it's one I actually view fondly many years later. Like I said, the only songs that I'm not so crazy about would probably be Born Free and It Is What It Is, and Tequila. Those are the three songs I would say are not my favorites, but the rest are pretty memorable, I think, and pretty brilliant. She definitely has an ear for electronic production, and she definitely knows how to create things out of nothing, which is very important for artists who are very DIY and very kind of creative. So she'll never conform to any sort of mold. So I hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know what you thought about these albums. It's really hard to discuss M.I.A.'s lyrics. I've talked about this before. I have reviewed M.I.A.'s albums Kala, or Kala as she says, and Arular. I will link those in the description, but I have still yet to review Matangi, and I have still yet to review AIM. So I'm going to go through and do those two albums soon when I get to them. So I will be making reviews of those. So I hope you enjoyed this review. Thank you so much for watching. I will link my social media on the bottom if you'd like to follow. And also, I am an artist, so I have some artwork that I have for sale, and I'm going to link it on my Fine Art America page, also in the bottom if you want to check that out. You can get prints and, you can get, t-shirts and all of these things with some of my designs on them and stuff. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day. Bye.
There is always something big I'm thinking about.